Hi everyone, welcome to our instructional video for our Worry Buddy kits. I have a lot of extra stuff here, but I'm going to go over what you'll need for your Worry Buddies and what we gave you and what you'll need to grab on your own. The first thing that we gave you, yours is in a zip top bag, but is a bunch of this. This is little glass beads. And that's what they use in things like weighted blankets or bean bags. You guys have a couple handfuls of that. So we will need those to make our Worry Buddies weighted. You also have fabric. I have a couple different kinds of fabric here. One is a kind of fleecy flannel that I had extra at my house. This will work and I like it because it's soft, but the pattern is a little bit hard to see. The other kind that I have is some faux fur fluffy fuzzy stuff, and this is what I'm going to use for my demonstration buddy. I think that this is so much fun. We gave you guys something that is a little bit fuzzy but also smooth, unlike my faux fur here, and that is because the faux fur is a little bit harder to work with, so yours will still be soft, and if you wanted to make a second one, you can grab some fur of your own. You also have, I'm sure you found it, some polyfill, stuffing, fluff, floof. This is what's going to make your Worry Buddy really nice and huggable. So we'll put that off to the side with our weighting material. You guys also have a baggie with these things in it. These are what's called safety eyes. You also have some noses in your bag, and basically what happens is we will poke these on to our Worry Buddies and put these little caps on the back. And these are designed so that they don't come apart, so the eyes won't fall out. And that's why they're called safety. It's so that you can't swallow them, or a small child can't swallow them. You're also going to need a needle and some thread. If these aren't things that you have usually in your house, you can get a small sewing kit usually from the grocery store or from CVS. I think they're in the travel section at CVS, and in the grocery store they're in the laundry / garment care area. You don't need a ton of thread or fancy needles, you just need some. I have paper here because I'm going to teach you guys the stitches you'll need on this paper, because it will be easier to see than trying to see on my super colorful fabric there. You won't need that. And the last thing you'll want is a plastic bag of some sort. I have a sandwich bag that I am reusing. If you have ones without the zipper, that's actually better. We're eventually going to cut this zipper bit off. But you'll want a plastic bag of some sort, and we'll get back to that later. All right, now that we have all of your stuff, let's go over the very basic sewing stitches you're going to use to put your Worry Buddy together. First of all, we're gonna get some yarn, and you want it to be about the length of your arm. You don't wanna make it too much longer than that. And that's because when you're sewing, you wanna be able to pull with your one hand and not have your thread get tangled. And take your thread, and you're going to thread your needle. Now, this can take a couple tries, but what you want to do, if you can see it, there's a little hole in the very top of the needle. You've got your pointy end, that's the point. You've got this end, that's called the eye. And you want to stick your thread right through the eye of your needle. It may take a few tries to get it to stay, but eventually, ta-da! And then you bring the ends of your thread together so that they match up, and pull out your needle so that your thread is folded in half, and it'll look something like that. Now I'm going to show you how to make a knot at the end of your thread to kind of stabilize your thread so that it doesn't pull through your fabric. We're gonna do, the person who taught this to me called it a kissing knot, and I think that's really cute. It's because the two ends, your needle and your thread, go and kiss. So put your thread perpendicular, that means making a T shape behind your needle, and hold it there with your finger. Use your other hand and wrap around 1, 2, 3, and then you're going to pinch that spot where the thread is wrapped around the needle, and take your first hand and pull it through, and you've got a knot in your thread. I caught some faux fur in there, but you can definitely see how that works. So now we have a nice piece of thread with a knot in it, and what we're going to do is take our thread, and you're going to come up from the bottom of your 2 layers of fabric, which I'll show you in a second, and you're going to make a stitch by going up, and then a little distance away you go back down. Now this, if you kept going up and down a little distance away like that, that would be called a running stitch. What I'm going to teach you is called a back stitch. It's a little bit stronger. It will hold your worry buddy together a little bit better. So after you've gone down through your paper, or not your paper, after you've gone down through your fabric, you're gonna come up again in a straight line, and sometimes it takes a couple tries, as you can see. And instead of going down forward, I'm gonna go backward. That's why it's called a back stitch. And I'm going to go down at the same spot that my last stitch went down. I'll show you that again. So I come up in a straight line, a little ways away, and then I go back down at the beginning of my last stitch. And you just keep going like that, and it makes this solid line of stitches. And you can see on the back, when you don't get your ends tangled, you can see on the back it also makes this straight line of stitches, and it looks nice and neat, and it keeps everything together really well, because you're basically making a stitch on the back and a stitch on the front at the same time. So there you go. That is back stitching. If you wanted to practice that on paper first, you could, or you can teach that to yourself as you're sewing your fabric. It is up to you. The other thing we're going to learn is called a whip stitch. Now, when you're finishing off your fabric, and you'll see this in a minute better, you're going to fold 2 edges in, and then to whip stitch, all you're going to do is bring your needle up from inside one of those folds, and then you go across at an angle, just like that. And you make little angled stitches all the way across your seam. So any place where you're joining 2 pieces of fabric together by stitching them, that's called a seam. And you've just learned to make 2 different kinds of seams. There you go. There's whip stitching. So I'm going to pull, I'm going to pull this thread out of my paper so I can reuse it in a minute. And let's talk using fabric and making a buddy. So this is my fabric I've chosen to work with. And what I'm going to do is leave it as a square for now, but eventually it's going to be round. So my first step is to sketch out the outline of my Worry Buddy onto my fabric. I'm gonna grab a marker. You can use a pen or a pencil. That will show up less than a marker. I don't actually recommend using markers, but I'm going to use one today because it will show up better on camera. All right, here we go. Marker. Now I'm gonna make basically a circle shape. It doesn't have to be a perfect circle. It can be any shape you want, really, but circles are going to be the easiest to sew and to get stuffing into. You don't want something with a lot, excuse me, with a lot of little, I yawned in the middle there. You don't want something with a lot of little squiggly edges, because that's going to be really hard to sew and really hard to turn inside out. My rule of thumb is you want your Worry Buddy to be about the size of your hand so that you can hold it in one hand and pet it and squeeze it easily. And since this square is about the size of my hand, I'm gonna make kind of an oval shape on my square. Ta-da! And there you have it. There's the approximate sketch of my Worry Buddy. I'm gonna take my thread, and just like I was doing with the paper, you can pin this together if you want. If that's an easier way for you to hold the two layers together. Mine are sticking together pretty well on their own. So you come up from the bottom, make sure that you're getting both layers. Come up from the bottom and make my stitch. Go back down through. And come up from the bottom again, a little further down along my line that I drew, and go back down at the tip of the last stitch. And I'll just keep going like that along the line that I drew until I've gone all the way around. Now you want your stitches to be pretty small and pretty even while you're doing this. You want your stitches to be about the size of a grain of white rice. And you want them to be about the same size. While you're still learning and practicing, they're not all always going to be exactly the same size. In fact, I know professional sewers who still don't always make all of their stitches the exact same size every single time. And that's okay. But if you make really big stitches, you're going to have really big gaps where not a lot of fabric is held together. Whereas if you make smaller stitches, you're going to have a lot more places where the fabric is held together, so it's going to be a stronger seam, and it's not going to leak stuffing or anything like that. So you just keep going, back stitching around almost the whole way. Now, as you can tell, this is not going to be a super quick 5-minute thing. This is going to take you a little while. This is a great thing to do while you're watching TV or listening to an audiobook. Just stitch away. If you have a sewing machine at home and you know how to use it, or there is somebody who's willing to teach you how to use it, you can use a sewing machine to sew around your circle. It's up to you. I will show you. I have this one that I started on that kind of hearts and skulls and crossbones fabric. I started this one earlier today and sewed all the way around from here to here, and I left a few inches open so that we can do the next few steps. I'm going to keep my needle and thread attached. I'm not going to tie it off or anything like that. And what I'm gonna do is I'm going to trim around my circle anywhere where there's extra fabric, and I want to leave about a 1/2 inch to a 1/4 inch of fabric in my seam, just because if you cut too close to your seam, what will happen is the whole thing will fall apart. So there we go. I have my nice little semi-circular buddy here, and I'm going to make sure that my needle is off out of the way and that I'm not tucking it inside. I'm going to take my fingers and very gently turn my buddy right side out. And you always want to sew inside out. So what you'll do is you'll take the side of the fabric you want showing and you'll put those two together. Like with this guy, I've got the fur here and I want that to show in the end, so I've got that together, and I've got the back on the outside. So that's called the wrong side of your fabric, and this is called the right side of your fabric. So when you turn this inside out, you have the part you wanted to see on the outside. Then we're going to stuff it. And the reason we have a plastic bag, and I'm gonna cut the zipper part off so that it's not hard, is that these guys, these little glass beads, are so small and kind of fine that if you put them directly in, they would kind of leak out through your seams no matter how good they were. And they might even, if you have a looser weave on your fabric, they might start leaking out through the fabric. So what we're gonna do, we're gonna take these and we're gonna put them in a plastic bag. And you can decide when you have enough. And this just adds some weight to your buddy. You can decide you don't want these beads in your worry buddy. It's up to you. And then what I would do is take a piece of tape, like duct tape, and tape this whole thing closed without any gaps, or you can fold it over and tape there. And of course my tape, oh, it is here. My tape has not gone missing. So I would take some tape and just tape it shut. And the reason we cut the zipper off is because these corners here can be a little bit hard, and we want our worry buddies to be as snuggly as possible. So tape it shut. Put some tape around the edges just in case. And that way your little glass beads aren't going to leak out and get all over the place when you play with your buddy. So I'm gonna fold that in half because my buddy is actually a little bit smaller. I'm gonna fold it down like this, and then I'm going to wrap it in some of my cotton, or not my cotton, in some of my stuffing / polyfill. And I'm gonna take that whole bundle and I'm gonna jam it in there. If your opening is not large enough to get the glass and the stuffing in all at once, you can always put the glass beads into the middle and then stuff your stuffing around it. I've given you enough pieces that you can probably make a few smaller worry buddies, or you can make one really big one. It's up to you. But I like the ones that are kind of hand sized, so I can just hold them in my hand and pet them. And now, one last thing before we close it up, eyes. So we talked about these safety eyes. What you're gonna do, you might want to draw little dots where you want the eyes to go using a pen or pencil. And then you should be able to just push them against your fabric. Oh, mine aren't sharp. If you can't push them through, you can do a little tiny little snip. That's all you need. And slide the eyes in. And let's do a tiny little snip right there. Push the eyes in. And then you can feel on the inside where they're sticking through like that. You take the protectors for the back and you snap them on nice and tight so that they won't come back off. And snap. Ta-da! Eyes. Super cute, right? And then we're going to do our whip stitch that I taught you. And the reason that you fold these edges over is that this part that's been cut is called a raw edge, and you can see right there, it's already starting to do it. That will fray and fall apart, and you don't want that. So you just fold it over so that it looks like your seam that you've already done, and we're gonna whip stitch it. And the smaller you make your whip stitches, the more they will just kind of blend into the rest of your seam. And eventually you won't even be able to tell where you did them at all. There you go. So all in all, I said this wasn't a quick project. For a sewing project, this is pretty quick. For a regular project, it takes a little while, but I think it's definitely worth it. In the end, you have a nice soft little buddy who can live in your pocket. You can give one away. You can give all the buddies you make away. I don't recommend giving these to kids under 3, just in case the eyes are not as safety as we hope they are. They should stay put under rough handling, but if you're at all worried about the recipient swallowing the eyes, don't give it to them. Definitely do not give these to pets. Especially pets who will chew on them. These are not safe. These won't hold together under pet chewing. All right. And when you get to the end of the hole here, and you've whip stitched the whole thing together nice and neat, or nice and not neat, however you feel inside, you can make a little knot by putting your needle through, and then see how it makes a loop. Instead of pulling that loop tight, you're gonna stick the needle through one more time and pull that through. I don't really have enough thread left, that's why this isn't going very well. There we go. And you make your knots like that, and that, my friends, is done. So when you're done and you have this little bit hanging out, best way to hide it is to stick it inside your seam, go ways away, and then poke your needle through and pull it out, because you don't want your needle to stay inside your buddy. And then snip it close to the fabric, but don't cut the fabric. And ta-da, you've hidden your end. And there you have a cute little worry buddy, all your own, to hold and snuggle and fidget with and toss and anything else you want. I am gonna finish up this fabric, fur one that I got started, and I will include a picture of that at the end of the video once I'm finished. Thanks for joining me, and I hope you have a great week. See you next time.